what do you really know about your investments and your financial advisor? Gary Cinderbrandt, a veteran advisor and founder of Better Path Training, has spent decades helping both financial advisors and their clients get it right when it matters most. Gary pulls back the curtain on the advisory world to reveal the truths, the gaps, and the opportunities that most people never hear about, but absolutely should. It's about more than money. It's about legacy, trust, and making sure the people you care about are in the right hands. Welcome to If the Public Only Knew. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
We have a very special guest today, Nina Cooke, who is a mindset coach. Now, some of you may be wondering, why do I need a mindset coach if I'm growing a thriving practice, if I'm able to make good decisions and lead from the front? How could my mindset possibly interrupt my growth? Well, I will tell you that in a brief conversation with Nina regarding my own coaching practice several weeks ago, she pointed some things out that once identified were incredibly obvious to me. But in retrospect, I think I was standing a little too close to them to see it. So, Nina, welcome. Thanks for joining us here on If the Public Only Knew. And since I cannot introduce you any better than you can introduce yourself, tell me, if you would, about how you got into doing what you're currently doing and the type of clients you work with and some of the things you're finding.
Thank you very much for inviting me onto your show, Gary. I've been working with entrepreneurs, with coaches, consultants, and financial advisors for a number of years. And the way I got into this business is through my own experiences. I realized as an adult that I was hiding. I was very worried about having people's attention on me. I'd stay in the background and stay quiet as long as I could. And this was having an impact on my life in various ways, including my corporate life. I worked for Time Life Books in the London office for a number of years. And I know my fear of being seen and my fear of authority figures stopped me from advancing as much as I could in my career there. I wasn't good at approaching managers and getting to know them because people of authority really scared me. This was replicated when I started my own business. I started my first online business in 2005. It was a personal shopping business. I was very good at getting clients at sales and marketing invisibly. I used Google Ads to get my leads, and then I would sell to them on the phone, never having to see anyone. And I had a great team of personal shoppers and makeup artists that did all the client work. Well, one day I landed a really nice corporate gig. It was a big accountancy firm in London. I booked them on the phone, and they booked me for a big evening, corporate evening, with their senior female managers and their senior female clients. I took along a team of 20 stylists, makeup artists, manicurists, and we went to these really swanky London offices. And all my team set up everything, and we were good to go. Then I had nothing to do. I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go and talk to the senior managers and see if I can book another corporate gig with them. So I started walking towards these really, high-powered women. And as I started walking towards them, I thought, don't go and talk to them, because if you go and talk to them, they're going to realize that you're not very good at what you do. And they're going to wonder why they ever booked you. They'll see everything that's wrong inside of you. They'll see all your flaws. And so I did a quick left turn, and I spent the rest of the evening hiding in a half-lit office. When I felt it was safe to come out, at that point, I knew I'd really, really messed up again. And on the train, on the way home, I made a really big decision that actually changed my life. I decided that from that point onwards, I was going to do whatever it took to fix myself. I felt that there was something inherently wrong with me, and I was kind of missing a part that other people had. And I had to find that missing bit in myself to make my life okay. And I went down a lot of different routes to try to find this missing piece inside of myself. And I knew that I needed to have permanent change. Whatever I did, it had to fix me permanently. And along the way, I tried over 30 different techniques, trainings, modalities. And in the end, I came across a coach. And he said to me, the only reason you feel like this about yourself is because you believe your limiting beliefs are true about you. This coach, he helped me to identify all my limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. Life is scary. I'm not allowed to play big. All of this stuff I've been carrying around in my head. He showed me that my 5-year-old, who had all these fears, was running my adult life and making all my decisions for me. And once we dissolved those beliefs, suddenly I felt like the filters on my life had lifted, and I could actually see things that I couldn't see before. And this gave me the freedom to start making completely different choices and decisions, because I no longer had that fear factor that kept tripping me up. And when I say everything changed for me, it literally changed my life, but it also changed my profits. And as I became more confident in myself and in my value, and I was able to market in a much more visible way, I started booking many more corporate clients like Goldman Sachs, Sky, and I put up my fees. And I realized something that had been kind of there in front of me, but I hadn't really looked at it properly. I realized that my mindset and my profits were completely linked with each other. And as I optimized my mindset and got it working for me and my goals, my profit grew. And that's when I realized, if I can do this for myself, that I can help other business owners build their wealth by working on their mindset. And when I say wealth, it's not just having more money. It's about better health. It's about having better relationships, about taking care of yourself, having time to do other stuff in your life besides work. All of that became my burning passion. And that's when I started working with business owners in different industries. But now I'm really focusing on financial advisors. I love working with them. They're the type of people who do what I ask them to do. They take instruction well and they apply themselves and they get phenomenal results.
That's an amazing story. I remember early in my career, I had all these great goals and aspirations, call them dreams, if you will, but I had no idea how to achieve them, none whatsoever. So I began to partialize them. That if I'm going to give myself a 5-year plan to go from here to here, that sounds great. It's practically impossible from the outside, but what would I do to partialize it? And I recall one of the things that struck me was, even though I was in my mid-20s, I almost took on the feeling that I needed to act as if I was in my mid-30s, already running at a much higher level. Did you allow yourself to project that person or individual or mindset you were aspiring to become, and then act as you think that person would act? Or what was that progression like? Was it just one moment where the light came on? Or was it a progression of things that you were able to experience, reflect upon, and then kind of put in this toolkit, building the person you are today? Do you recall that at all?
You said something that is key to the change that I made is key to everyone's change. It's your self-image. It's how you see yourself. It's being able to project yourself into a situation which you can't visibly see yet, but you've got to imagine it from within. And that for me is faith, believing in something that you cannot actually see yet. So for myself, my transformation came from identifying and dissolving the beliefs that I had about me, which I believed were true, i.e., I'm not worthy, I don't deserve it, I'm not lovable, all that stuff. And with all the clients I've worked with hundreds of clients, it kind of boils down to those beliefs. So we go through all the different levels of beliefs and then we see what's underneath that, and we tend to come down to that. And that's what stops us, because we think I don't deserve to have more money. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to have that level of success. I don't deserve to have that type of lifestyle. And when we tell ourselves that, we believe it's true, then we will do everything we can to make sure that stays the truth about us. So once I was able to see that these beliefs were just made up stories and that I could actually choose a different story about myself, then I could start stepping inside of that and seeing a different life for myself. And one of the key things I've found in making a change within our lives is to start seeing ourselves differently. And to do that, we have to start thinking about what we really want in life. Most people don't know what they want. It just feels fuzzy to them. But once you can identify what it is you want, what you want to achieve, why you want to do it, then that becomes your guiding principle and your biggest motivator. For me, my motivation was to convince entrepreneurs that they could change their whole success by changing what was within them. I wanted to show them, look inside, and I will show you how to make that change. So that's been my guiding principle, to point themselves to within themselves. And it is all about your self-concept and telling yourself and visualizing yourself and writing about it every single day. We've got to do it every single day. So I didn't do it just then. I still do it today. And there's setbacks, so a client or prospect may say they don't want to work with you. Something else happens. You put out an offer and it doesn't give you the results that you want. So you always go back to that same place of, what's my goal? Instead of worrying about what didn't happen, come back to this place of, this is the life I want, and I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus on the problems. It's keeping your focus on your goal all the time, every single day. And in fact, I have my goals written here. I have them written on my goal card. I have it here all the time, and I will look at it every single day. I will write out my goals every day. I will carry them in my head, because if you can come back to this quickly from any setbacks, that's how you're going to manage your success.
You bring up a lot of points, and I can see why financial advisors would be especially, I would say, fertile target for your services. I recall when I was in my high growth mode during my days at Merrill Lynch, I would know where I stood as far as new assets in the door and productivity for that month and that year to date, or even that day. I knew my numbers every day. I knew where they were. I knew what I needed to do. I would constantly calculate how far I was away from that next milestone that I wanted to pursue. A lot of advisors I work with today, I ask them where are they year to date, and it takes them 5 minutes to consult the machine to figure it out. And that tells me a lot right up front about how they operationalize their practice. Nina, walk me through, if you would, what you find with your typical advisory client, from prospect to bringing them in as an advisee, and the type of outcomes you discuss, if you would.
They have various challenges. Obviously, everyone's unique and everyone has different challenges, but they tend to fall into the same kinds of buckets. They have stagnated in their business and they're not as far along as they want to be. One client said, I'm 30 years behind where I want to be. So they have a lack of consistency and a lack of focus on what they need to work on in their business in order to grow their books and grow their profits. They procrastinate about doing the outreach and the follow-up, which is the bread and butter for any financial advisor. They let themselves become overwhelmed by being busy and doing stuff which isn't the client or the profit-generating work they need to do. They have team challenges which they're not addressing. Either they're not hiring because they're worried that they won't have enough money to keep that person, or they have a team which isn't working well and they're not addressing that, and therefore there's wastage in their business. They're risk averse. They don't want to make a decision which would be crucial in their success and then getting to the next level, but they're scared to do it. So it may be opening a new office. It may be going to conferences or networking on a bigger level, they tend to self-sabotage because their habits and their behaviors aren't lined up with their goals. So, for example, if their goal is to grow their AUM by 20%, their habits are about resisting taking the action to make that happen. So their habits and behaviors are contrary to what their goals are. And we know that our habits and behaviors will override any goal because we will do what's easy and comfortable for us that we do on a day-to-day basis. So they're struggling to scale, they lack clarity, they want more, but they don't know how to get there, and they're sometimes not prepared to do what it takes to have more. So they can have the best marketing strategy sitting on their desk, but they won't implement it. And that resistance comes from having to change their habits. And we're very resistant to changing our habits. In fact, I would say the one word that sums up why most business owners aren't as successful as they want to be is resistance. And the resistance is deep. It's been there a long time. And it takes commitment. It takes determination and grit to break down that resistance, but that's what's standing in their way.
I notice a lot of similarities. I know you primarily work with the SEC side, the registered investment advisory side, but I find the same thing on the broker-dealer side. The patterns of behavior are the same. When you first start out, you're given a desk, a phone, and an opportunity, and hopefully you're going to capitalize on that. But your goal is basically to get invited back the next day, is to build a book that has some sustainability, that allows you to make a little bit more money than you make when you start, and you grow from there. The phenomenon that I see, and it's almost paradoxical in nature, is that as most advisors begin to get some modicum of success based on their experience, the average size of their clients begins to go up. So in your first year, you might open anybody with $250,000 because you're afraid to talk to somebody with $1 million. By the time you get into your fifth year, your average client that you're opening up might be $750 to $1.5 million, but you're afraid to talk to anybody that's got $10 million. By the time in your 10th year, you've got those accounts. And now all of a sudden, you hit some form of plateau where you might have 80% of your households you opened in your first 5 years that only now account for 20% of your profitability, but you've got to manage them. And then you've got these larger accounts which are supplying your income. And most advisors basically hit a plateau because they go from active asset hunting to build their book almost to passive management. Like I'll get the occasional referral, or maybe something good happens here. In the advisory world, there are 4 things, at least in my mind, that qualified as work. Preparing to talk to a prospect, talking to a prospect, preparing to talk to a client, talking to a client. Other than that, it's administrative. So how much time can you actually spend? And what's fascinating is when you talk to an advisor about how much time they spend on those 4 activities, especially a senior advisor, it might be 10 or 15% of their day, which is remarkable. When you mentioned procrastination, I would tell you if procrastination were an Olympic sport, financial advisors would medal every single time because there's nobody better at doing this, of just letting other thoughts come into our head and move past. So following up on that, when you're dealing with someone, and there are common patterns obviously in the brain of an advisor, when you see the patterns, and there's patterns you've seen repeatedly, what's your process for getting that client to start to at least have enough faith to go to that next step, to start to believe there's something better out there when they've convinced themselves for decades that this is as good as it gets? How do you get them to switch the lights on and at least see that there might be another possibility out there?
Yeah. The first thing I do is I ask them what they want. So we set a bold, scary, exciting goal. And they look at that goal and they say, I'm never going to get that. I say, okay, this is the beginning of our work together. And if we're going to be working together for a year, you need to work on something that's really big. There's no point just setting a small goal that's not going to leave you, that's not going to excite you. You need something that's big and scary. And let's see where you are by the end of the year with that goal. Because when you have something to aim for that you feel excited by, that's when something starts to stir within you. And then I show them how to internalize that goal, because most goals we set, they just feel out there somewhere. They don't feel part of us. So I show them how to have a daily mindset practice where they focus on their goal every single day. Now, the funny thing is, one of the words I keep saying to my clients is repetition. Repetition creates a habit. And if you want to internalize your goal and make it a part of who you are and have an emotional connection with it, you have to look at it every single day. You've got to think about it every single day, repeatedly, persistently, consistently. Now, these are words we don't often want to hear because we're all looking for the magic bullet. Our attention span is getting smaller and smaller. We want things immediately. We're becoming more impatient because we just get everything at a click of a button. But in order to create a habit, for example, if you want to lose weight, if you want to become a great skier, you're not going to get it from a click of a button. You do it by constantly focusing on it and implementing it. So I want to teach them that they have it within themselves to create amazing new habits by applying themselves. And then once you start doing that with one thing, you can do that with everything in life. I think we've lost that habit of consistently working at something to have it in our lives. We almost need to slow down and make sure that we build that discipline. So our mental diet is clean and we're always focusing on what we want and not on the problems. So we set the goal and I teach them how to focus on it. Then we look at their mental blocks that can stop them from having this goal. So they may think, well, I can't charge fees, or I can't go for those high wealth clients. I haven't got what it takes. I'm not good enough. I didn't go to the right schools. I'm not the sort of person who can achieve that sort of success. I haven't got the value. I won't be able to produce the results for my clients. So we have to get rid of all of those mind blocks that can get in their way. So I show them how to do that and then to create new powerful beliefs in their place. So then we have the goal. The desires are lined up with the goal. Then we have to look at their habits and their behaviors. What are the unproductive habits that they're currently doing, which could stop them from having that goal? We have to change those behaviors. So I show them how to swap out unproductive habits with productive habits, which really means focusing on the profit generating activities in their business. And then once we line up their behaviors and their habits with their beliefs, with their goals, then suddenly things start aligning. Now, everyone's an individual, and some of my clients will do everything I ask them to do from the very beginning. They just have that mindset. Give me a strategy and I will do it. Other clients will throw up a whole load of resistance and they will make every excuse in the book not to do their daily mindset practice in between calls. So they'll say, well, something came up, I had to deal with it. Oh, I didn't have the time to do it. And this happened and that happened. So this is all resistance. So we have to break down that resistance so they start changing their mental diet and putting their focus on their goals, because that's what it is. And as you put your focus on your goals, ideas start dropping into your mind, opportunities start showing up. You start feeling compelled to take action that you wouldn't want to take before, because everything is aligning with your goals. And working with clients is an absolute joy because it kind of let me get inside their heads. And then we discover all this stuff that had been hidden away that they didn't know was running them, all this behavior, all these old programs. And then they can start changing them, but with awareness and with intention, and make sure it all lines up with the goal. That's what it's all about. And it's not about the pot of money at the end. It's not about the new car or, sending your kids to the best schools. The actual point of having a big, scary, exciting goal is the growth that you experience. That's the big win. And how you deal with setbacks, how you get back on your feet, how you keep that goal in your head and you don't waver from it. That's what you get out of this work. And the material stuff is really nice, but it's how you change, how your self-concept changes. That's the big thing.
You bring up a lot of memories of kind of my own career pathway. And one of the things that I really thought about in the 80s when I first started at Merrill was I wanted to be a member of one of their elite levels. In that era, it was producing $1 million dollars or more back for the firm, back for Mother Merrill. And at the time, I think in the early 80s, mid 80s, I think there were maybe 250 or $270 million producers. I mean, doing that today is very much different. The adjusted inflation equivalent would be like 2.5 million, but it was a big deal back then. And I set a goal to pursue it and get it by my fifth year. And everyone told me I was kind of nuts. It's never going to happen. And my thinking was, well, they don't know who I am. They don't know what's in my head. And I worked in a very small office, actually in a converted garage that they set up as an office. And I just didn't have any distractions. I wouldn't interact with people. I was social, I was nice, but whatever they did, they did. I knew what I needed to get done. When I finally went through it, took me 6 years to do it. But had I not set a goal for 5 years, I may have never done it, or it might have taken me 12 years. So I wanted that big, scary goal, that big, scary dream, if you will. And then what I needed to do was partialize it, that I need to do these behaviors. I need to bring in this amount of money. I need to this amount of referrals. And I started keeping score. And one of the things I found, which was fascinating, was a lot of problems that I identified up front seemed to fall by the wayside. Other issues would come up that I hadn't considered, but all of a sudden solutions would start to present themselves. I wasn't sure where they were coming from. They were like aha moments. So, I know we don't use all of our brains all the time. I think men only use, actively use about 20%. Women a lot more, clearly, because you're way smarter than we are. But along those lines, I was fascinated with how that came about. When I finally went through that number in my sixth year, and I was at a recognition dinner, it was wonderful, and there were other people that did it that year as well. I remember another advisor coming up to me and shaking my hand and said, "Boy, you must be really relieved." And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure what you mean." He said, "Well, no matter what happens going forward, even if you never do it again, you hit that number." And I was gobsmacked. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know whether to get angry. I didn't know whether to feel badly for this person. I had no clue. But I just nodded and said, "No, thanks for the congratulations." And as I reflected on it more and more, I realized that this is a person that didn't, I would say, wasn't jealous of my success, but was in a position where he'd made a decision that could never be him, that would never occur, and that just, just enough is good enough kind of a thing. And I really felt badly for that. And I don't know if you could really change that mindset one way or another. There was this long-held self-limiting belief that I think affects a lot of advisors. That's why we have quintile measurements. I had no interest in being in anything but the first quintile. So you bring up a lot of really good points, but as advisors, we're a pretty stubborn group. We get paid to render our opinion, and hopefully people will pay for it. How do you take someone who's clearly been successful and they just hit a full stop? For instance, the markets we're seeing right now, where volatility is extraordinary, where clients are more nervous than they've been. A lot of advisors are more nervous than they've been. How do you help them navigate through these self-imposed, maybe they were caused by some traumatic thing earlier in their life or in the business where they just heard no so many times? How do you get them to detach from that? Recognize that the operationalization of their business is one thing, but how they operate up top is the more important thing. How do you make that connection for them?
Well, some people will never think that it's their mindset that's the issue, and they're not open to doing this work, which is absolutely fair enough. But for those who have that awareness that I think it's me and I'm doing this stuff and I need to, really work on this, then what I would like to do is to show them, give them some evidence that they can change their beliefs. I have a process, it's called the Unstoppable Success process, where I will show a client how to dissolve a limiting belief they could have had since they were 3-4 years old. They've carried it all their lives. For them, it's a 10 out of 10 in that they believe in that this belief is true about them. So let's say the belief is, I'm not good enough. They know that this belief has been a part of them since before, since they were a very young child. And they believe this is true about them. It sort of informs decisions that they make, how they show up in life. It just bubbles away beneath the surface for them. So what we do is we take that belief and we dissolve it. It can take about 10-15 minutes to dissolve that limiting belief. So it goes from a 10 out of 10 to a 0 out of 10. They suddenly look at that belief and say, I can't ever believe that was true about me. I could just see that's just a thought I had and it's got nothing to do with me. They'll go from believing 100% true to thinking that's got nothing to do with me now. And then I say, okay, so what is true about you now? And they say, well, of course I'm good enough. That's just the truth about me. So we swap out an old limiting belief for a new productive belief, and then they start making different decisions. Once they can see that, then they know that every limiting belief they carry about them is equally untrue. So you have to see the evidence sometimes to say, okay, I can see things can be different. I can think differently about myself. And what I've been hanging on to all these years is actually not the truth. I can bring a different perspective to myself and to the world. And that's like opening a new page of a book and reading something different and thinking, oh, wow, I didn't realize that it could be like this, just as it happened to me when I changed my beliefs. So I very much believe when you actually show and demonstrate, then they can see something different. And if you look at it, it's exactly the same about how we form our limiting beliefs. We form a belief that, there's something wrong with me. And then we keep looking for evidence it's true. So we're very evidence-based in our thinking. Well, I never got chosen to be in that play. I wasn't good enough for it. There's something wrong with me. That teacher could see inside of me and could see that's why she didn't pick me. Oh, look, I didn't get that promotion at work. Just more proof, that I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. Oh, look, I can never get, all those clients keep saying no to me. More evidence. Evidence is stacked up. So we need to change it and say, this is the evidence that you are good enough. This is the evidence that you can have as much success as you want. This is the evidence that, you can build wealth. All of these things have to be proven in our minds before we take it on to be true.
It triggers a lot of other thinking. The most successful advisors I know basically have a client standard, a minimum, and usually it has nothing to do with the amount of assets they have potentially under management. It has everything to do with whether or not they can go on a very long journey with that individual. Do they click? And sometimes it's difficult, especially if someone makes a decision that they want to do business with an advisor, and the advisor knows it's not going to go well. You can just tell, but they'll take it anyway, almost basically selling themselves short because they don't believe somebody else is out there that fits their vision of what I used to refer to, and I still do, as an ideal client. And ideal clients have certain characteristics that you should be able and you can identify up front. And what I found was that when I was dealing with a prospective client, I never gave the impression that, I'm here trying to win your business. I tried to give the impression from the outset that this is a two-way discussion and both parties have to agree that if you decide you want to come with our practice and I decide I want you to come aboard, there are certain rules and guidelines we're going to follow. And I got that out of the way right up front, because if I couldn't manage that particular client's behavior going down the line, I knew it would not end well. As a result of that reinforced my ability to go out and not necessarily find clients that had a specific need. I hunted for clients that I felt strongly would fit within how I wanted to grow my practice, and then I would find more clients from them as well. When you're dealing with an advisor, and most advisors, I can tell you mentally, we have the attention span of a feral hamster for most of us. We're trying to do so many different things at once. How do you get them to kind of take that big exhale and put that dream or goal out there that they've shared with very few people, where it's almost embarrassing to them that they never pursued it? Do you think that's really the first breakthrough moment where they get to identify and articulate and personify what that meaning would be for them? Is that what you're kind of hunting for in those
Yes.
conversations?
Having what does that goal mean to you? What is it? What is the essence of that is going to give you? What's the feeling it's going to give you? It's getting them really connected to that goal. So, for example, one financial advisor client, he's 67 and he wants to exit his business. So when we started working together, he said, I'd like to sell my business. I said, when would you like to sell it? Well, maybe in 4 or 5 years' time. So, but when would you like to sell it? Well, I'd like to sell it within the year so I can start doing other things. I said, okay. So when we put together his goal was to sell his business within a year, make sure his team were well taken care of, and that he would stay and work in that business on his own terms, the hours he wanted to work and doing the work that he wanted to do. And I said, is there anything else you'd like to put on, in your goal? And he kind of looked a bit puzzled. Well, what else could I want? I mean, that would be everything I wanted. I said, is there anything else? And he said, it'd be really nice if I sold the business and then we could group together with another bunch of independent firms and we could sell that and I could get another payout down the line. So let's put that on your goal card. Within maybe 5 months of us working together, 4 businesses approached him to buy his practice. He didn't go out looking for them. They came to him. And he's probably going to get more for that business than he thought he would get when he first started working with me. And one of them has said, yeah, you can stay on and work the hours you want, and his team are going to be well taken care of. So that's what happens when you really do the work on your goals. When you commit to your goal, things kind of happen and show up for you because you're putting it out there. You're putting it out there because you're thinking about it. You're putting out that energy about it and you start expecting it to happen. So the more you familiarize yourself with your goal, it becomes like your friend. It doesn't seem like a stranger to you. It becomes very familiar to you, almost as familiar as, the house you live in. Then it becomes a part of who you are and your thinking kind of aligns and meshes with that goal. And that's when opportunities, ideas, inspirational actions all start coming together. So it's kind of, you start off not believing you can have it because it seems too big. And then you start thinking about it in a different way and you start believing in yourself that you can have this goal. So it's a transitional period of time, but it doesn't happen if you don't have the commitment to it, if you don't think about it every day. And this is, to be perfectly honest, this is why most people don't achieve their goals, because they do it for a couple of days. Well, nothing's happened. It doesn't work because I've tried it for a couple of days and it doesn't work. Well, have you tried it for a few months? Have you tried it even for a couple of years? Because the people who achieve big goals, they're resilient. They're very stubborn. And they will keep thinking about their goals, even if they're not seeing any movement in the outside world. They will not waver. They're the ones who get the biggest results because they've trained their mind to focus on what they want. And they will not let go of that. Whatever they see, contrary evidence, they will not let go of that goal, that image they have in their mind.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. And you were saying the last few phrases, I was kind of thinking back of my own progression, being hired as a 23-year-old whatever they called us, financial consultants back then, or account executives back then, and what my progression was, and how frequently I would say, what am I doing? I'm getting knocked back, and I would just get up again and just keep moving forward. As long as I got up one more time that I got knocked down, things progressed, things moved forward. So you were very quite eloquently, I might add, describing a lot of the mental things I went through as I was building my practice up to the level it ultimately hit. Couple of last questions. First of all, a lot of advisors will hear what we're discussing. What would represent a really good potential prospective client for you first? And second, how do they find you? How do they get in touch?
Well, a great client is a client who's willing to do everything I ask them to do. I give them a daily mindset practice, daily accountability to make sure they stay on track and they achieve that big goal they set out right at the beginning of our coaching program. So it's the willingness to do what it takes to have what they want. And if they have that mindset, then they will achieve huge, huge results, not just in profits, but in health and in relationships as well. So you get everything if you just follow the program.
And how do advisors find you? I know you have a good website I've looked at. You've got a book. Tell us about the resources they can access on your website, a little bit about your book and how they get in touch.
Absolutely. I put together a tool to help advisors to find out what their limiting beliefs are, because often we just don't know what's stopping us. So on this Millionaire Mindset Scorecard, I've put down 5 money limiting beliefs and 5 success limiting beliefs, which can stop many people. So every financial advisor can score themselves on this scorecard and find out what their biggest blocks are to more money and success. And that's a free resource that I have. Also, if they feel so inclined, they can get my book. It's called Renegade Mindset, and it's written for financial advisors to help them to create a peak performance mindset to achieve the success that they want. Those are the 2 easiest ways to
Excellent.
find out more about me and the work I do.
We'll make sure we put links to how people find you, as well as your email address in the show notes as we go. Any closing thoughts you'd like to add?
You can have what you want. It's not some special people who can have that. We all have the capacity. But in order to do that, be determined. Don't let what's going on out there put you off. Keep a very strong thought in your head about what you want in life and make it your dominant thought.
Thanks, Nina. Our guest today has been Nina Cooke with Millionaire Mindset, and I can tell you, I wish I'd met you much sooner in my career, but I can't argue with anything you've said, because a lot of it was bringing back memories of how I developed my own financial advisory practice over the years, building it to the level that it did. Nina, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm
Thank
sure
you,
the
Gary.
audience will really enjoy it. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out If the Public Only Knew with Gary Cinderbrandt. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to follow the show and share it with another advisor, investor, or friend. For more on Gary, or to check out any links mentioned in the episode, head to the show notes. We'll see you next time.